Well, there we go. Well, everyone, welcome. It's such a delight to be here with you for our third Thursday Inspiration series with DBSA California Depression Bipolar Support Alliance. We're overjoyed today to host our Meet the Author and a really amazing book launch of the new book, Beyond the Bipolar Label by Dr. Andrea Vassilev, and she is a PsyD. I'm going to read her bio, and then we're going to get into the meat of our talk tonight. Dr. Andrea Vassilev is a California-based psychotherapist specializing in the treatment of bipolar. A clinician, academic, and advocate, she has lived with bipolar herself for nearly 30 years. Dr. Vassilev is the creator of Overcoming Self-Stigma in Bipolar Disorder, the first program of its kind, which is now being implemented worldwide. She's the author of the recently published Beyond the Bipolar Label, which addresses shame and self-stigma head-on in an interactive workbook. An award-winning advocate, Dr. Vassilev collaborates with major outlets and organizations across the globe to speak and write on her unique mix of clinical and personal expertise in an effort to increase knowledge and combat stigma. Dr. Vassilev serves on the board of directors for the International Society for Bipolar Disorders and was longtime co-chair for their Experts by Experience track. Dr. Vassilev also serves on the Scientific Advisory Board for the Depression and Bipolar Support Alliance, DBSA. So, Andrea has been a champion for the bipolar community for years upon years upon years, and we're absolutely delighted that she's here today to share with us her very exciting launch of her book, which incidentally I just purchased and will be on my doorstep tomorrow. And I encourage you all to do the same. And she's got plenty of tools for all of us to shake off the stigma that we have internalized for years upon years for all the reasons that had happened. So delighted to have Dr. Vassilev take the floor. Thank you. Go. Let's
Thank you
get the ball
so
rolling.
much. Thank
Sure
you so
thing.
much. Beautiful introduction. Thank you. It's a little humbling to sit and listen to that kind of thing. It's like, oh man, they're talking about me. Uh, but thank you for having me. I am delighted to be here. DBSA and especially DBSA California are very dear to me. Before I even went to grad school, I was working as locally as a facilitator for my local DBSA. And that sort of sparked this desire to do more, do more, and do more. And so it's sort of my origin story. I was on the board of directors a long time ago for DBSA California, and I currently run with a friend of mine what we call the Mood Pros Society, which is a DBSA group specifically for clinicians with mental health conditions. So clinicians with, it's mostly therapists with bipolar. We have nurse practitioners, psychiatrists, all of that. So that's pretty cool. So just want to express my gratitude for an opportunity to be here and connect with all of you. I do have the chat open, which is great. If you have specific questions, let's save them for the Q&A, but I do want to be able to chat with you guys. So if you could give me like a reaction, a thumbs up, a heart or something, if you've ever felt bad about having bipolar, just see what pops up here. Oh, I see a lot of thumbs ups. See a lot of thumbs ups. Okay, so this topic will hopefully resonate. I want to read a little excerpt from the very beginning of the book. Got my earmarks here, right? Um, to see how it lands with you guys. So let me read for you. Madeline's life had always been a roller coaster. She would go for days with little sleep and still perform fantastically at work. But this energy could spin out of control, sending Madeline on impulsive spending and sexual sprees. When the highs crashed, they would be followed by endless weeks of debilitating depression. She could barely eat, shower, or leave the house. When she was finally diagnosed with bipolar, Madeline felt some relief at being able to explain her behaviors. But along with the label came a pit of shame in her stomach. Bipolar felt like a dirty word. She couldn't help but think of everything she'd ever heard about people with bipolar. Moody, unstable, dangerous, they all came to mind. Was this her too? This self-stigma chipped away at her confidence and her hope. As Madeline went through life with her bipolar diagnosis, she felt the world's harsh judgment. From TV characters to casual remarks by colleagues, negative attitudes about people with bipolar really seemed to be everywhere. These stereotypes painted a grim picture of someone erratic, violent, and unregulated. Madeline often felt lumped into a preconceived notion of what it meant to have bipolar without being given the chance to be herself. Even though Madeline engaged in treatment, this may sound familiar, bipolar still got in her way sometimes. She had to ask family to care for her children when she was hospitalized and had to reduce her workload to avoid triggering symptoms. From struggles like these, Madeline developed further negative beliefs about herself and felt even worse. She started to question her worth as a mother, employee, and human. Madeline felt so embarrassed by her diagnosis and experiences that she didn't share them with anyone. She kept them from friends and partners for fear of rejection. Her bipolar felt like a dark secret and a burden she was condemned to bear alone. So I'm wondering how much that resonated with those of you who are here with us this evening. Think about it. Add in the chat if you'd like. If my experience is any indication, I'm going to presume a lot of it resonated and pretty deeply. So what Madeline is experiencing is self-stigma. So let's break down what that means. I'm going to put up a slide or two just to get a visual. That's not the slide I want. That's the slide I want. Let me go back and share my screen. So we talk about stigma. First, we talk about self-stigma. We got to back up a little bit, right? To see what is regular stigma. So stigma refers to the negative beliefs held about a group of people due to a difference in them. That could be anything. That could be people of a certain religion, people of a certain ethnicity, people who have bipolar. So a common stigma for people with bipolar is that we are unreliable and dangerous. You guys can see the slide, yes? If you can't see the slide, let me know. Okay, next step. What is self-stigma? Well, by extension, self-stigma refers to the negative beliefs someone holds about themselves due to a difference in them. For example, having bipolar. Okay, I have bipolar. Everybody knows that. I have bipolar, so I am unreliable and dangerous. That is a negative belief I hold about myself simply because I have bipolar. There's two ways this can happen. I know this sounds a little like academic-y. I promise it's not too bad. Um, academics, people traditionally talk about self-stigma as internalization. So we hear all these stigmas from media, from public, from friends, from family, from whoever's talking about bipolar, and we think, oh my gosh, wait, am I overly emotional? Am I hard to love? And we take those stigmas and we put them in ourselves. We internalize them, right? That's the traditional model. Now, in running the groups that I've run, I've heard another way that this can happen, and this is the model I developed. Because I have people come to me and say, all right, well, maybe the public believes that, but I don't believe that. But hey, Dr. V, I actually did this thing where I was dangerous. Like I actually caused someone harm during an episode. That's truth. That's not a belief that someone holds about me. But what can happen is we can distort those experiences. So we might have a real experience of being temporarily unreliable or dangerous, but it becomes like a global judgment on us. I hope that makes some sense because it's important to consider, are we listening to society and internalizing stigma, or did something happen and we're just distorting it or overemphasizing it, right? So those are two ways that self-stigma can happen. Okay, why does this matter? This matters for a lot of reasons. We'll get to this in a second, actually. I'm going to stop sharing my screen here because here we go. Why does this matter? Let's see, first of all, how it applies to you. So I'm looking at if you've got your book, if you look at page 13, I'm going to read a couple of self-stigmatizing statements, right? And just reflect for yourself, how true does this ring for me? Like on a scale of 0 to 10, how true does this feel? Okay. Put the glasses back on. Give me a second. Oh, they made the print so small in this book. I'm overly emotional. I am difficult to love. I am unreliable. I embarrass my family. I can't be productive in the workplace. I am a burden on others. I'm lazy. These are hard to read. I mean, they hurt my heart. Um, I'm unable to control myself. I can't look after myself and meet my needs. I will never get any better. Oh, we've all been there, right? I am at fault for having problems. I am weak. I cannot maintain romantic relationships. I will never amount to anything. So, those are some really common self-stigmatizing thoughts. Um, By the way, I can't really see the chat while I'm doing this, so I'm going to rely on my co-hosts to look at the chat, and I can look at it in a little bit. But why does this matter? Okay, so yeah, you're going around feeling terrible about yourself. Why does this matter? It really does matter. We saw some of the outcomes, but actually, I'm going to go back to the chat. What do you think some of the outcomes of having these thoughts are, these self-stigmatizing thoughts? Can anybody just throw a word or two in the chat? Oh, Giselle says, what book? This book. This book that I just wrote about self-stigma. Low self-esteem, bingo. Failure, feeling like a failure. Shame, shame. We've got the shame thing here for sure. Anything else? Despair. Good one, good word. Um, Shame is the emotional core of self-stigma, really and truly. Lower self-esteem, there's a lot more outcomes too. Experiencing worse or more depression, having a hard time believing in yourself, yes. Um, Feeling discouraged, lower quality of life, feeling embarrassed, not seeking or maintaining treatment, so that's going to make you feel worse. Poorer mental and physical health, less ability to cope. I'm not making these up, these are all from the research. Withdrawing from friends and relationships, worse functioning, giving up on life goals, and recently research has shown that self-stigma, specifically in bipolar, has been linked with increased suicidal thinking. So this matters. It's a big deal. This isn't just a luxury to feel good about yourself, it's really a necessity. I'm going to walk you through the main parts of this book, which was written specifically to address this issue because you should not have to feel this way. Okay. For example, understanding bipolar and especially your experiences with it can reduce self-stigma. A lot of pain, um, a lot of shame can come from not understanding what's happening in your brain and your body in terms of symptoms and experiences, right? So, chapter 2 of the book teaches about bipolar, but way past the basics. Like, if you're here tonight, you probably know a decent amount about bipolar, right? But it talks about, it gives opportunities to become familiar with your own experiences because every presentation of bipolar is different. I do this professionally. Every presentation is unique. Um, but there's some other interesting things. There's a section that I love called Everyday Differences. It's page 26. And it helps you recognize that certain features of your life or your behavior may not be like just you or just a quirk or something like that, but may be related to bipolar. And you're not alone in experiencing them. And that's the beauty, is knowing that you're not alone. So I'll give you one that most people don't realize and usually really enjoy hearing. So, struggles at work. Employment can be heavily impacted in those in bipolar. Tangent, true story. I just had my birthday. I'm in my 40s, and I have never worked a full-time job. I now do a lot of things that add up to just about a full-time job, but I have never worked a full-time job, and I didn't work at all for many, many, many years. Many, like, yeah, like maybe 10. So you are not alone in this. And this makes sense, right? This makes sense because a recurring condition that can show up without much warning is triggered by sleep and social rhythm changes and flares under stress is going to present challenges in the workplace. So, approximately 80% of people with bipolar have missed work due to psychiatric reasons, and more than a third have missed 2 or more of the last 5 years of work. That is a lot. So this section also goes on to talk about, well, what can I do about that? That's depressing, Dr. V. Thanks for letting me know, right? Uh, I understand how frustrating it is to be capable and skilled and to have your brain hold you back. I really, really do. But don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good in this situation. Just because you can't work in the way you imagined doesn't mean you have nothing to contribute. You may need to restructure your work life from the ground up in order to protect your brain. I certainly did. In fact, true story, part of the reason I wanted to go into being a therapist was because then I could make my own schedule because I couldn't work as a teacher because I couldn't be there at 7 a.m. every morning. So consider part-time employment, working from home, a hybrid arrangement. Ask yourself whether jobs with hard deadlines, high stakes, and cutthroat competition are really for you. And just as a note, if you're unable to work at all, I see you. I was unable to work for many years. You don't know what the future holds. So I urge you to do all you can to make meaning in your present, even if that's not through employment. So that's one everyday difference. It also talks about heightened reactivity, which many people experienced, increased creativity in bipolar, affective intensity, which is basically just the intensity of your emotions. So that's something that you see in chapter 2. Let me check the chat, see if there's anything going on that I want to. Oh, people talking about work. Excellent. Yes, I was just going to say, I know DBSA Cali has a wonderful career workshop series with my friend, Dr. Caroline, whose last name I'm not going to try and pronounce. But I wonder if you agree with this. So I have found personally in my own life and with my friends with bipolar and professionally with my clients that living with bipolar can start to eclipse the rest of who you are, right? There's so much suffering, there's so much care to be taken, there's so much self-management. What time am I going to sleep? What time am I having my meals? Did I stay up too late? I shouldn't have anything to do. So much self-management, right? It can start to feel that there's not a lot of bandwidth left for the rest of who you are. And I would like to assure you that the rest of who you are is really, really important. So chapter 3 is focused on celebrating your whole self. For example, I want you to think about the story of your life. If you are telling yourself sort of this internal narrative of what your life has been, what it is now, what it might be in the future, how much of that story revolves around bipolar, right? I know that bipolar can be really good for marking time. Okay, I had this episode, then I started this project, then I moved to this place, right? It's a good time marker. But I would just want to emphasize on page 39, the story of my bipolar is not the story of my life. I want everybody to say that with me. I know you're muted, say it anyway. The story of my bipolar is not the story of my life. Because that's the truth. So when we talk about this internal narrative that each of us has as to, what our life is all about, I want to give you some tips for how to craft it. There's a lot of activities in this section. I'm jumping to the end of this chapter because I think it's the most interesting. But I want you to see nuance. See nuance in your experiences. Yes, you've had good times. Yes, you've had bad times, but you've also had a lot of in-between times, right? If you're thinking about your life story, aim for neutrality with a positive spin, right? You don't have to, I don't need toxic positivity. I'm not asking you for that. Aim for neutrality with a slightly positive spin. This is one of my favorites. Remember that the present moment is just one point on a long timeline, right? We tend to view our lives or situations based on the present moment. One of my favorite quotes, I actually have it hanging in my kitchen, just on a little sticky. It says, the bottom of the valley never provides the clearest view. And in the case of bipolar, neither does the top of the mountain, right? So we need to zoom out and get a broader perspective on what our whole life story is, not just this one moment in time. And lastly, because I'm so stubborn, allow room for hope, right? I am obstinately hopeful. I will not let this condition take my hope. I just won't have it. But hope really is an essential ingredient in any wellness journey. So Unfortunately, living with bipolar can diminish hope, but it's such a powerful agent for recovery and resilience that we really, really need to hang on to it with everything we can. So those are some ways where we can think about our internal narrative. And there's actually a section at the end of chapter 3 where you get to write a really brief autobiography. I can make it long if you want, that's fine too. I give mine as an example on page 41 because I wanted to be honest and transparent and not make up someone else's biography. This is mine. So you get the chance to sort of integrate your experiences. I'll go back to the chat, give a quick look. Yes, Abigail, thank you. Thank you. Uber feelers. Yes, we are Uber feelers. That is so true. So getting really to the heart of some of this work, how many of you put in the chat if you're familiar with cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT? If that sounds familiar, if you've done some, if you read a book about it, or maybe not. Maybe nobody's going to say, oh, love CBT. Yep. Okay. Erica raises her hand. Good. Okay. Great. Okay. So I'm not this is not a book about CBT. So that's the good news. There's one chapter that introduces fortune telling is my favorite. Um, there's one chapter that introduces CBT concepts, and the next chapter applies them to self-stigma. For those of you who are maybe less familiar with CBT, let me distill a very distilled version down to something even smaller. Very briefly, CBT helps people examine how their thoughts, their feelings, and their behaviors interact, right? And one powerful tool from CBT is called reframing. We'll get to that in a second. So thoughts, feelings, behaviors, how they interact. A very basic loop is you have a thought, which leads to a feeling, which leads to a behavior, which you can see on page 49. Let me show you. This is basic CBT stuff, but I put it in here because it's important. There's even more interplay, but for our purposes, we're going to keep it simple. Reframing is when you take the thought and you change the thought, you make it more true, more helpful, and then you get different feelings and different behaviors, okay? So we had some self-stigmatizing thoughts before, but let me just go back and let's pick a couple. Does someone want to put in the chat one of their favorite thoughts from before or one that they've had? A self-stigmatizing thought. I'm damaged, I'm overly emotional, I embarrass my family. Things will never get better for me. Thank you, Abigail. Let's do that. Oh, I'm broken, I'm obsolete. Okay. Let's start with things will never get better for me. So these thoughts, things will never get better for me. I won't be a good parent one day. Oh my goodness, do I feel that one? I am broken. I am obsolete. These thoughts, like, look how quickly these people were able to come up with these in the chat. They are there, even if you're not consciously thinking them or reading them or anything like that. They are running a current. They are running on repeat in your heads, even if subconsciously. So let's consider the consequences of that, right? If you have a thought and it leads to a feeling and it leads to behavior, you're in a domino loop, right? You're in a loop. Whatever thought you start with is going to determine your feeling, which is going to determine your behavior, right? So let's take, for example, bipolar makes me too broken to be lovable. Jenna said, I'm broken. Okay. Bipolar makes me too broken to be lovable. If that's the thought that's repeating in your head, what feeling might you have? What feeling comes from that? If that's in your head, how do you feel? Let's see in the chat. Sadness, bleak, hopeless, isolated. Ooh, that's a good one. Yeah. Lonely, betrayed. Yeah. So bipolar makes me too broken to be lovable, can lead to things like sad and lonely, any of that. And what behavior? What's the point? Hopelessness. What behavior might that lead to? Something, okay, bipolar makes me too broken to be lovable. Wow, I feel sad and lonely. Behaviors might include isolating, shying away from other people, right? So we've gone very quickly from this automatic thought that you don't even realize you're having to isolating and shying away from other people, right? That's That's such a direct impact from this thought that's not even true and definitely isn't helpful. Okay. Um, let's do one more. I can never take care of myself. Why didn't I figure this out before 59? I ruminate on this. Becky, just as a side note, I hear this all the time, and it's because um, we didn't have we still don't have great diagnostics, let's be fair. We didn't have very strong diagnostics 59 years ago or 40 years ago or whenever this started for you. So uh, I don't want you to be hard on yourself because you didn't have a degree, or maybe you do have a degree in mental health. I don't know. You didn't have a career or a degree in mental health and couldn't figure out at the age of 20 something, 30 something, whatever, that this is what was happening. That's not fair to you. So I'm sorry that the system failed you, and I really hope that you don't take it as a judgment on yourself. Um, coming back to this, sorry, I've got big feelings about that. Another self-stigmatizing thought, I can never take care of myself. How does that make you feel? Well, for me, it makes me feel like a failure, right? If I think I can't take care of myself. And a behavior might be something like neglecting self-care. If you think, well, I can't take care of myself, like why even bother? Why bother to try, right? So you see how these detrimental thoughts, these self-stigmatizing thoughts go round and round. Um, the problem is, as you've seen with these thoughts, you can't believe everything you think, right? So part of CBT talks about thought distortions. Thoughts aren't facts, they are your interpretation of facts, okay? Many thoughts are untrue and unhelpful, and identifying a thought reduces its power. So there's a number of what we call distortions. I don't want to get too in the weeds here, as for the sake of time. But sometimes people have things like catastrophizing, right? Which is presuming the worst possible scenario will happen. Please raise your hand, even if your video is not on, if that's the thing you do. Just saying. For example, if I have another episode, it will ruin my life and everything I care about. Now, I'm not going to tell you you'll never have another episode, but I am going to tell you that that's catastrophizing. Maybe it will ruin some things. Chances are it's not going to ruin everything. Okay. Another distortion is all or nothing thinking. Okay. Seeing things in the extreme, using words like always and never. An example, self-stigmatizing thought for all or nothing thinking is I can never take care of myself. Never? Like, really? Excuse me. Um, maybe there are times when you struggle to take care of yourself, but never is a bit too all or nothing, a bit too black and white to probably be true. So we go through this part in the book where you write down your self-stigmatizing thoughts, which as you go through the book, you find more and more and more hanging around your head, and you name the thought distortion. Okay, so all these distortions can lead to thoughts that are untrue and unhelpful. But what would happen if we reframed these thoughts? What would happen if we addressed them, we addressed the distortions, and we made them more true and more helpful? Okay, well, think back to the loop. If you put in a different thought into the system, you're going to get a different feeling and a different behavior, right? We would have different outcomes. So chapter 5 of, in case you're just tuning in, is all about how to reframe these thoughts. So it walks you through really carefully the process of doing this, which we'll do a little bit of. But there's some principles, even if you're just sort of starting to think about your own thoughts, to consider your own thoughts. I'd encourage you to take a non-judgmental perspective. For example, the classes again. If the self-stigmatizing thought you're having is, I'm such a loser because I can't hold a job. You can tell I put a lot of myself into this book. It's a lot of personal experience here. That's a self-stigmatizing thought, but a non-judgmental reframe might be something along the lines of, I'm frustrated that I can't hold a job right now. You see how differently that lands for your feelings, which will ultimately impact your behavior as well? It's a big deal. It's a big difference. I encourage people to have to use more positive wording, right? Most self-stigmatizing thoughts would benefit from being less negative, right? Neutral to positive. Let's move the needle a little. So if the self-stigmatizing thought is, I'm a burden when I'm not stable, okay, can we like reword that so it doesn't land so harshly in your nervous system? Something like, when I'm having symptoms, I need support from others, and that is okay. I'll do one more here. Um, Operate through a lens of self-compassion. Okay, great concept here. Self-compassion means showing yourself the kindness you deserve, and let's be honest, the kindness you would probably show someone else. Let go of your inner critic and filter experiences through a loving lens instead. So if the self-stigmatizing thought is, I messed up again, I ruined everything because of bipolar, that's not very self-compassionate. What if you reframe it as, I'm doing the best I can while managing a difficult condition. Mistakes don't make me a failure, they make me human. I'm going to read that one again. I'm doing the best I can while managing a difficult condition. Mistakes don't make me a failure, they make me human. Okay. Now, some of you, I'm going to mind read a little, which is a cognitive distortion, and say that some of you may be thinking, if Dr. V, this really doesn't make a big deal. Well, it really does. There are mountains and mountains of literature on CBT in many, many things, but actually in self-stigma specifically, right? You may also be thinking, I don't know, this feels a little bit like I'm lying to myself. I addressed that on page 67. Reframing is not sugarcoating. It is, in fact, finding the core truth, the core meaning in your thoughts. It's not ignoring your pain, it's incorporating additional perspectives. It's not toxic positivity, it's choosing neutrality over our inherent negativity bias. So, if you've got skepticism, that part's for you. Um, so let's see about if we put in one of these new thoughts into our thoughts, feelings, behaviors loop, what new feeling we get, right? So let me go back to the chat here. If we start with the thought, I will never amount to anything, what would a reframed thought be? Any ideas? I'll give you one if nobody's got an idea, but let's see. I will never amount to anything. That's okay. Nobody has to step up. A reframed thought might be, my condition may change the course of my life, but there is still plenty I can accomplish and be proud of. Oh, I like Becky's. I am doing what I can in the moment. I like that because it's time bound, right? It doesn't extrapolate into the whole future. It's in the moment. So either of these, what's the new feeling? My condition may change the course of my life, but there's still plenty I can accomplish and be proud of, or I'm doing what I can in the moment. For me, that would make me feel capable and inspired as opposed to discouraged. And if I'm feeling capable and inspired, I might pursue big goals. I might pursue small goals, pursue any goals, right? See how changing this thought has changed not only my feelings, but changed my behavior as well. It's kind of amazing. Um, Hold on. My apologies. Got my mug here from Friends of Center for Youth Bipolar Disorder, great organization in Toronto, if anybody's wondering. Um, let's do another one. Bipolar has ruined my life. That's a big one. Oh, that's a big one. Because you can feel where it's true in moments, but ruined is such a big word. So a reframe might be, I've had serious struggles, but I've had good times too. So I'm not trying to take away the truth of the struggle. I'm not doing that. I've had serious struggles, but I've had good times too. And that could make you feel more content, which will make you be able to enjoy small pleasures, right? Our lives may be neurotypical, but they can still be purposeful and meaningful. Yes, very much along the same lines. I love it. Make you feel content and be able to enjoy small pleasures. So you see how different those outcomes are from feeling sad and lonely and isolating to feeling capable and inspired and pursuing goals. That's really powerful. If you do this consistently, this kind of reframing, you will in fact reprogram how you think, feel, and behave because the brain is a series of patterns. It keeps doing what it's been doing. That's it. Which brings us, I might have to talk a little faster here. Brings us to chapter 6, which I'm not going to lie, is probably my favorite chapter in the whole book. It is about disclosure. Disclosure is just a fancy word for sharing, telling people. Now, self-stigma impacts disclosure because there's shame around it, right? If I had a cold or the flu, I'd be like, guys, I have a cold or the flu. Maybe I have allergies, that's why I keep coughing. I don't know, right? I wouldn't feel bad about telling you about it because there's no shame in having a cold or the flu or allergies. But if you have bipolar, there's stigma there. And so people don't want to talk about it. But that in itself is a problem because then it becomes more hidden, more secretive, more shame, et cetera, et cetera. So you're gonna have to read chapter 6. But there are two things about disclosure that I want you to take away from tonight, from this talk, and I really hope you can put them into practice right away. One, before you share, I want you to identify what you will gain from the sharing. You don't owe anybody your story, okay? Sharing, there are many ways that sharing could help you, but I want you to identify them before you start to talk. Two, disclosure can happen on a spectrum, just like bipolar happens on a spectrum. Disclosure can happen on a spectrum. You may tell one person that you have a mood disorder. You may tell another person everything that happened during that manic episode. You may tell someone else something in between, right? The great news is on the New Harbinger website, and let's see if I can put this in the chat. New Harbinger is the publisher. Um, there is something called the Disclosure Decision Cheat Sheet, which, if you're in the book, is on page 80 something, 87. And it is a free downloadable tool. Let's put it here. That's the, if you click on free tools, you should be able to download it there. And it will walk you through the decision process. It'll answer 4 questions for you or help you answer 4 questions. To share or not to share, with whom to share, what to share, and how to share. And it will allow you to practice your disclosure in advance once you've done that. Okay. So that's really important. If you struggle to talk about your bipolar because of self-stigma, definitely urge you to read chapter 6. Briefly, 2 more areas that interplay with self-stigma are culture and relationships, which I don't know we have lots of time to get into, but it works both ways. Culture, family, relationships, all of those things can breed or protect you from self-stigma. And honestly, often both. You may hear things in a specific culture that generate more self-stigma, but that culture may also have protective factors that boost your self-esteem and fight self-stigma. There's the section where I interviewed people in our community with bipolar to get their perspectives on their cultures. Also, same with family and relationships. In interpersonal relationships, self-stigma can be a barrier because you may not want to share with someone, which prevents you from getting close, or just so many things. But I really want to look at the final chapter, which is kind of a call to action. It goes through a lot of things. It goes through the wellness continuum, which is something I love. You're going to have to look in the book for that. This one talks about how you can create meaning and live your life, no matter how well you're doing at any one moment. But hopefully by now, if you've read the book, you've learned and you've grown and you are less limited by self-stigmatizing beliefs. So this chapter, like I said, takes on themes of wellness. It talks about bipolar pride, which is a controversial topic because I know some people in the community who are ashamed of this diagnosis, and while we want to work on that. I also know people who are proud of bipolar and the gifts it has given them. And I know other people like me who say, I would give my left arm to not have this condition, right? Here, take it. Like, seriously. So while I can recognize some silver linings, I don't know that proud describes my experience. There's no wrong way to do this. It's an interesting topic that is explored in this chapter. Also talks about community and the community of amazing people that we have. DBSA is one of the places that I talk about that people can go to meet other amazing people with bipolar or other mood disorders. But there is something that I want to leave you with, and it is this idea that you have a stigma busting superpower. Let me read to you. You, my friend, have a superpower, the power to fight stigma just by being you. We touched on this idea in chapter 6. Stigma feeds on ignorance and misinformation. We are the antidote. We are the living, breathing truth this world so desperately needs. We are the message. Simply by being ourselves and living openly with bipolar, we chip away at the stigmas surrounding it, one interaction at a time. When people meet us, they have the chance to expand their understanding of who people carrying the bipolar label, that's you and me, truly are. What a precious gift to offer the world. It's a radical act of service to ourselves, society, and everyone who will walk this path after us. Together, by showing up as we are, we can pave the way to a kinder, less stigmatized world. Now, I know that might sound scary. If you weren't dealing with self stigma, you probably wouldn't be here tonight. So I think that, well, this paragraph is the goal to become someone who fights stigma just by living well. There's ways in the book where you can start engaging with it in really, really tiny ways, how and if and when it works for you. So, if this material resonated or felt useful, I really hope you'll pick up a copy of the book and dedicate the time to yourself to work through it. There's a lot here, but there's a lot of growth um, that can be achieved. One last thought. Um, if you're thinking, wow, I love this book. I want to do this book, and you don't want to do it alone, on the free tools on the website, I created book club materials. So if you want to recruit some people, there's even a flyer I made to put up in a doctor's office or somewhere, or some friends from DBSA. Um, you can run a book club. I made a worksheet for each chapter, so everybody reads the chapter, come in, discuss, share, bond, grow, make friends. I highly encourage you to do that because I think that self-stigma can be very isolating, and this is a wonderful way to connect. Maybe meet new people, connect with people you already know. So really encourage that. I think that could be a lot of fun. So I haven't been looking at the chat, but now I am happy to take any questions about the book. We're going to do like a meet the author after. We'll kind of shift into questions you may have for me. But if you have questions about self-stigma or the book or the program that inspired the book, now's the time. Thank you all for listening.